Welcome to episode number 20 of the Castbar. We have the winners for the Heroes of the Storm beta keys, and with that we are going to be rolling straight into another giveaway. We sit down and break out our theory caps for a closer look at the Timewalker system, and do a quick wrap up with a review of Onyxia's Lair. Thank you, and enjoy. Welcome everybody to the Castbar, the World of Warcraft podcast channeling your content with no interrupts. I am Michael Schwan. It is 7:30 Pacific Standard Time, and with me I have Evan.
How you doing, Michael?
I'm doing great. And Florian.
How's it going?
It's going really well. So, here we are again, at big episode number 20. Got some winners to announce. They should already have their keys when we get there. I already sent them off earlier today. We'll announce them regardless. We got another one coming up, and what you guys been doing this week? Anything new?
Well, I've been playing a lot of Heroes of the Storm, man, an ungodly amount. It's a lot of fun, man. I think I went and bought the Founders Pack to get in. I couldn't wait any longer, and I'm making up for lost time and getting my money's worth at the same time.
That's good. It's a fantastic game, and it just keeps getting better. I know some people who are extremely judgy of it, but you know what? I don't care. I love it.
It certainly is a good change, and it really shakes things up. I like the familiar heroes especially. That really makes it a lot more immersive than I kind of gave it credit for. I thought it would come off as kind of, I don't know, cheesy, but no, it's actually really engaging, and I'm enjoying it, kind of exploring around. It's always good to get a new MMO where you're in that initial phase where you're a noob. Everything's fun, you know.
But at least this one you're familiar with enough of the elements and stuff like that. It's not like jumping into a new MOBA altogether where you're like, I don't know who any of these people are. None of these people mean anything to me. This is just, dude with bow number 7 that I've played in a game like this. It's like, no, that's Sylvanas. I know who that is.
Right, and that's how I felt about Dota 2. I never played the original Dota very much in Warcraft 3. I don't know if it borrows the same characters. I expect it kind of does, but, I think that might be... With so many other MOBAs on the market, I think that might be the catch. That's what's going to drag the people in to play this one rather than the competitors, at least from the Blizzard crowd.
Right. And, it's just a great game. One of the things that attracts me the most to it is that the games are so much quicker. That was one of the things that bothered me the most about League is that, games could last up to an hour, but a long game in Heroes is 30 minutes. And I just really enjoy not having to be so dedicated to the game.
Yeah, that's definitely one of the game's strong points, because I'd previously avoided MOBAs for a lot of reasons, and one of them was the fact that games can just run so incredibly long. And I rarely have the time nowadays to just sit down and play a game that's going to be an hour plus long.
That you can't, get up and walk away from. It's like, oh, I'm raiding. Okay, well, this boss is going to take 10 minutes, and then I'll just, be like, hey, guys, I'll be right back in 5 minutes, and, take care of trash while I'm gone. Or something like that.
Exactly. It's more bite-sized gameplay, which I feel Blizzard's gotten really good at over the years.
Well, they understand that a lot of their player base now isn't 15-year-old people. I mean, back when we were playing Warcraft 3, or when Warcraft first came out, we were much younger and we had more time. But their player base, a lot of it is people who have just stuck with Blizzard. So they realize that a large number of their player base is older now, and they can't just dedicate themselves purely to a game for, an hour straight or more. I mean, even raiding, you're able to get up and walk away from
right.
For a time being.
But unless you're pushing cutting-edge content in a world-class guild, you're not doing fights that last an hour long.
Oh, God. Please never. No, that's true. My week, however, has been... I played BioShock Infinite last weekend, and then after that I started getting into Divinity Original Sin. It was a game that was entirely created through funding via Kickstarter. And that game is really good. Really slow though. I've played like 20 hours and I've gotten nowhere. So I don't know how much there is to the game, but I have not even gotten fully away from the very first city yet, or completed the first step of the first quest. So the game can devour your life away because like things don't go very fast. So there's just so much time involved.
Oh, the good old days.
It's also pretty hard. I will let anyone thinking about getting it know that, like, if you've ever played any type of tabletop RPG, so D&D, Pathfinder, anything like that, just imagine if they made that a video game, because that's really what it has become. It really feels just like I'm playing D&D, except it's in a video game. Like, you have action points, you know, I couldn't describe it any other way.
Oh. Well, this might be something to check out. On WoW, though, I have been just logging in, doing the dailies, collecting the resources. Might make another push for a tier 4 item. Is that what there are 4 blacksmithing tiers now? Crafting tiers?
Yes, tier 4. 675/685, depending on weapon/armor.
Yeah, still might be able to squeeze another upgrade out of those. Got a tier piece, just a normal Blackrock tier piece, so that's a big downgrade from item level. Fortunately, the token was Warforged, so it's only a loss of 9 item levels, but I'm waiting till I get my 4th piece in order to equip it. So,
how big is your 4-piece?
It's pretty good, honestly. It's like a cheat death tied to my Vampiric Embrace, and the 2-piece lets me cast Vampiric Embrace. Wait. Is that the right thing? No. That's a Shadow Priest thing. Vampiric Blood. A lot more often. So I haven't tested it out. I don't know how it will work functionally, but supposedly I can't die while Vampiric Blood is up, which is huge if it works the way I'm kind of imagining it. But I'm setting myself up to be disappointed if I say it's like a death shield forever.
Well, I guess you'll find out. What about you, Florin? Anything new going on for you?
Not that much. I've been continuing to try to play online games, but with little success due to the internet issues. I have gotten into Kingdoms of Amalur, which is a surprisingly good game.
Is that cheaper? Because like I really wanted to play it when it came out, but it was like $60, and I wasn't having that.
You can get it for cheap a lot on Steam sales. I find it's generally cheaper because it's not a very popular game. It got pretty middling reviews, which I just don't understand because it's actually an excellent game.
It got those reviews because it came out right around the same time as Skyrim, which really hurt it a lot.
Yeah, well, depends on how you look at it. In my personal opinion, I like it more than I like Skyrim, but I'm very much in the anti-Skyrim crowd, so I'm probably biased in saying that.
Sure. All right. Anyway, guys, let's go ahead and get into the news. Welcome to the news, everybody. I will be honest right up now is that there is very, 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 very little news. In fact, there's almost none. There's one thing that we have to talk about that wouldn't be just grabbing from some sad little bit of information that was posted somewhere. But really, in terms of legitimate news, there's essentially none. So we'll just fire off the first and pretty much only real piece. The only real piece of news we have is that the WoW token's price has been announced, and that is that Blizzard has said is going to be set at $20. I believe one of us said it was going to be $20.
I don't think it was me.
No, it was me. I'm totally being completely pompous right now.
Oh.
Ow. So they said it's going to be $20, and they're going to set the starting price in terms of gold. Because they can't just leave it up to... Because after they set a price, then it'll fluctuate up and down based on supply and demand, but obviously it has to start somewhere. So they're going to set that at something. They didn't say what, and even though the WoW token was put into the game in 6.1.2, it's not actually officially released yet, so we don't actually have a time when it's going to actually be in our hands and either suck up all of our gold or all of our cash, whichever side of that boat you're on. And that's about it.
Pretty much, yeah. Nothing really new to report. They've given us all the details. They haven't really given us any more to go on, I don't believe, unless I missed something.
I've looked, I didn't see anything.
So it's just a matter of the waiting game. People are probably making the tentative decisions about whether or not they can take advantage of the system. I wouldn't be, making edits into my budget yet.
Well, here, let me ask you this question. Because they did a poll on MMO Champion about what people would be willing to pay for the token. What would you guys be willing to pay for 30 in terms of gold? What would you guys be willing to pay for 30 days of game time?
Probably like 30K. Honestly, probably.
Right around 30K?
It's difficult to say. Simply because I have very little gold. So I just wouldn't. At all.
The only point I can think of to bring up is that I think gold flows a lot easier on some servers than others. So I wonder if this is going to create like a population move from the big high auction house rollers to servers that have a little bit of a healthier economy where they can bank a lot more gold. Or do you think everybody who cares about making as much gold as possible is already on a server with a good economy where they have a lot of profit?
Well,
just as an example, 685 Mythic High Mall BOEs on Illidan, I have heard recently, are only about 10k. On my server, I mean, that would be astronomically high, like in the 50s, probably.
Yeah, on my server, which is probably right in between Earthen Ring and Illidan, I'm on Proudmoore Alliance. They're sitting around somewhere around 25 to 30k, depending on the piece. So I don't know. I mean, because it's not completely relevant in this case, because WoW has the 1% problem, of which it's just like the real world. 1% of the population has all of the gold, and the rest of them live, under a certain amount. So, there's a few people that are technically what we'd consider like middle class, sitting around 200 to 500,000 gold. Most of us are 100,000 gold or less, and then there's the people who have 5 characters with gold cap.
Right, yeah.
With that, like, the people that would be looking to exploit that gold already have so much through their own system that it doesn't matter. They wouldn't need to change servers. So I don't really think that's a problem. And then with the WoW token being region-wide, it's not sold on your server, it's sold on your region. So, like, you'll see all of the tokens for US.
Right, I know just the point that the gold tokens don't reflect the local economy. You have differences in the local economy that's going to affect how the gold market looks relative to you. And people who are on servers that, pay out a lot more gold through the auction house are going to drive up global prices. And that's going to affect people on realms where it's harder to get gold.
Well, it depends. I mean, if the people on the servers where it's harder to get gold, if those people are selling the tokens, then that is, in a way, just flooding that server with gold. Maybe not necessarily flooding, but it's definitely helping. So, it'll be really interesting, because it'll purely depend on who does what in terms of gold buying and selling with the token.
Right. You're exactly right. This is the first big example of huge amounts of gold. I mean, in the tens of thousands at least per transaction, moving from server to server. And that might have an equalizing effect on the kind of gold disparity between the different economies across different servers, because when you think about it, if gold is really scarce and really valuable, then you're more likely to buy the Blizzard token. If gold is kind of a dime a dozen, or a different, more appropriate metaphor, you're more likely to buy those tokens up. So maybe that's going to be the driving force and not really just a, source of disparity and unfairness.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, and it'll be purely dependent on the people who are on the servers. Population will have an effect, but we might see it affect the local auction houses just a little bit, because gold may or may not be available. But I think that'll also just depend on the price. I mean, if it's at a price where everyone buys it, in which gold is flooding out of the server, then you might see things on the auction house getting more expensive because there's less gold available.
Yeah, that's what I meant by a kind of an equalizing force.
It'll be hard.
You'd have the opposite effect happening somewhere else. Where, yeah, go ahead.
It'll just be hard to tell, and like the problem that you were talking about with like Illidan, and the mythic items, it isn't because there's more or less gold available. There's just more people raiding, so there's more people getting those mythic BOEs.
Right, you're probably right. Any closing thoughts there for you? Tie everything together.
Not really. All we can just do is wait and see how it plays out. Like, this is all economic stuff, and any economy is so complicated that you can't really say how anything is going to work until you try it in practice. So I'm just adopting sort of a wait-and-see attitude to this whole thing.
Well, and there's a reason that people have to go to school for 4 years or 6 or more to become the people that actually understand what we're talking about. I personally have not went to any economy classes, so...
Right, and not to mention that you can't really see much of WoW's economy at all, like the U.S. or other world economies. Of course, you have a lot of metrics, a lot of people collecting data, and then a lot of the data is public. Wow, we don't know anything. Like, what is the total amount of gold that's in all players' combined inventory?
I don't want to know.
I mean, there's no way we could be able to get that kind of metric, and that probably take a lot of work to develop the metric on Blizzard's part.
That number is probably huge.
I would imagine. It's flowing in every day. Yeah, but, I seem to keep my balance kind of even, so maybe it's a little bit of a steadier number than we think.
Maybe. I don't know. Anyway. And we have the winners for the Heroes of the Storm Beta Key giveaway. Our first winner, for those, by the way, we had, just this last week, we had a giveaway for a few Beta Keys in the Heroes of the Storm. We asked people to tell us which character from World of Warcraft they wanted to see in Heroes of the Storm. We got some very interesting submissions, and our first winner comes from Lucas, who suggested Thiassi, the Lightbringer. And I totally had to look up who that was.
It sounds like Alliance Scum to me.
I don't know. I had to completely look up who it was, and even after I looked it up, I still didn't know who it was. So, if you guys want to take a moment and look up who Thiassi is, I didn't know.
The Lightning Bringer, I'm saying, actually.
Oh, well, maybe I read the email wrong.
Oh, wow. Yeah, okay, so the big patchwork golem guys with the beards that follow the Vycrool around.
Right.
Yeah, undead abomination tall guys. And he is a NPC in Dragonblight, and he's mean looking, and he's called the Lightning Bringer. I don't know if that was a mistake on your part or our contest winners. But that's how WoWhead's displaying him. Maybe he brought the lights before he brought the lightning.
Oh, nope, I'm just wrong. He wrote the Lightning Bringer. I just moved it into the show notes wrong. I still had to look up who it was, but I never remembered. I didn't recognize the name at all.
Very interesting suggestion. I'd be interested in as to why you suggested that one.
I'm going to go fight this NPC now to see if he does something cool. Is he a rare spawn?
Not sure.
Okay, well anyway, Evan, would you like to take the second one for us?
Second winner is our good friend Tai Kuta. Congratulations. We'll get some applause for yeah.
And his suggestion was Maximilian of Northshire. Any thoughts on that?
I know that's definitely Alliance Scum.
Yeah. Hey, easy with that scum word. Mr. Only Horde player here. You're outnumbered 2-1, boy. He doesn't seem real concerned.
Yeah, well, I mean, no. Yeah.
Of course, in all reality, your Tauren Death Knight, who's item level like 670 or whatever, could probably take both me and Florian. Because Florian, what's your item level? Like 645, 650?
I think I'm like 640 something right now. I'm not entirely sure.
And you're a Death
Somewhere
Knight,
in the
correct?
640s. I am a Death Knight, yes.
Which spec are you?
Blood.
Okay, so a 640 blood DK. Okay, you wouldn't be able to kill us, because it's a 640 blood DK against a 662 holy priest.
No, I might be able to kill the priest.
Back away from me.
I'm 683, bub. You're
Ah,
picking a fight
jeez,
with
you're
the
so
wrong
much higher
dog.
than I thought.
Anyway, so just going to talk about this admissions a little bit. Maximilian in Northshire, ironically, or perhaps unexpectedly, isn't found in Northshire at all. Either of you want to guess what zone you can find Maximilian at?
Westfall?
No, Ungoro Crater. That's really far away from Northshire.
That is really far away from Northshire. I haven't questioned Ngoro so long. What does he do? Is he like some sort of wannabe adventurer? I mean, I again, this is another person that I don't immediately recognize, but his name, Maximilian of Northshire. As he stands on a rock and King Crush comes over and noms him. King Crush isn't an Ungoro. What is the big double sword that's in Ungoro?
Oh, shit. Double sword?
Devil sword. Tyrannosaurus Rex, except in WoW.
Oh.
They're called Devil Swords.
King Dread.
King Dread, that's it. King Crush is in Shalosar Basin.
With no A.
Anyway, thank you, and I hope you enjoy your beta key Taigutai. I already sent it to you. Florian, would you please give us our last winner?
Yeah, our last winner is Hubert Kolozko.
Kolosco? I don't know. I'm not
sure
cheer
how
for
you do
him.
the SZ. So he's going to be entertained by Heroes of the Storm. He recommended that Garrosh Hellscream be added to the game, which seems like a pretty sensible recommendation.
I would love to see Garrosh in the game. We don't currently in the game. There's not a straight up standard warrior from Warcraft, which I think is what Garrosh should be.
Right.
Straight up, like he needs to have Whirlwind. He'd be an arms warrior. So like Colossal Smash. I don't know.
Would they give him an old god skin? Do you think a Yashar skin?
Oh, would they give him his gross, gooey, I've been corrupted skin? Probably.
That'd be pretty awesome.
I'm sure it'll be available in the store at least.
Oh, yes.
Like, yeah, I'm almost positive that would be in there somewhere. But anyway, congratulations, everybody. I hope you enjoy your time in Heroes of the Storm. And please let me know if you want to play, because that game is ridiculously fun and addictive, and I think I'm only going to play 2 games for 30 minutes, and then I've been there for 3 hours. Because Heroes and Blizzard, and I like taking my money. And speaking of Heroes real quick, that their whole system of each week we put a new hero on sale is just rude, and just loves to just be like, what? It's only $4 instead of $9? Okay. I keep on buying things, and I should really stop. Anyway, we do have one more thing to discuss in the news segment.
Aid me! Something you doing? Grant me your strength. No time for play. Me busy. Leave me alone. Animality. I'm not that kind of orc. Sweet. Ha! No! I will wield your strength!
You quite okay over there?
I think Evan enjoyed it.
Oh man, I wonder if anybody can guess what's happening now.
So, we're giving away an Iron Skyreacer, and that would be said Iron Skyreacer escaping from Beast Lord Darmak. I'm glad you like it, Evan.
It's like listening to old 60s radio special. Just the imagery through the sound is fantastic.
I tried.
Yes.
Okay, everybody. So we're giving away an Iron Skyreacer. If you already have an Iron Skyreacer, I'll let you know right now. If you end up being the winner, then you're more than welcome. Just pick a different one. But the promotion currently is for an Iron Skyreacer because funny sound and all that kind of different stuff. The winner is going to be announced. What day is that? April 26th, the last Sunday in April. Of course,
yeah.
Of course, that's the one thing I didn't put in the show notes. The day we'd actually announce the winner, April 26th. That's correct. We are conducting the contest through Rafflecopter. which basically just counts all the entries for me and makes it really easy compared to putting everything into a spreadsheet myself. There's a link in the show notes. I'm going to be sending a link out on Twitter. There's a link on our Facebook. If you need a link and you can't access any of those, send us an email at thecastbar@gmail.com. Let me get this link to you somehow, and that way you can just, enter. There's several ways to enter. You can, I believe Ralph Copter lets us make you follow us on, look at our Facebook, follow us on Twitter, tweet at us on Twitter with a specific hashtag, or send us an email. You can send us an email or tweet at us with the hashtag once a day for additional entries. And then after we hit the 26, we'll grab them all up and pick a winner, and then we'll send you off your mount. I love doing giveaways. So what were your thoughts on the little sounder, Florian, since we already know Evans?
It was different. That was for sure. I'm not entirely sure what happened to that orc, but I hope he's okay and he got some medical attention afterwards.
This tells me that Florian hasn't done the Beast Lord Darmak fight.
I am not entirely clear on what happened there.
Well, I'm not going to entertain any suppositions in the court of law here. I'm wishing everybody luck on the giveaway, though. I mean, this is a really cool way to get a cool mount. I mean, I know that I haven't spent a dime in the Blizzard store right now, and mount giveaways are a pretty good chance. Even if you want to just tweet us, even if it leads to just starting a conversation and being cool and getting involved with the show and everything. I mean, that is really its own reward to begin with. So it's a win-win-win, right? So we get to hear from you guys. You get to talk to us a little bit, maybe start a conversation that goes on past that, and then, man, you get that chance at this mount. I think that's pretty sweet. I think it's a pretty sweet mount. I never see this around anymore. I'm not entirely sure if that's because of the lack of flying mounts being used in Draenor generally.
I think it's cool even as a ground mount.
Yeah.
But that's just me. But I really just like mounts in general. Any and all of them are welcome to be in my bags.
So it'll stand out, though, definitely.
And also it fits the theme right now.
What's the theme?
Warlords of Draenor?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And it gives that mount a little bit more context, too, because when the mount released, we were still in Pandaria, and I'm like, this is a strange thing.
Yeah, it did seem like a very awkward time to come out, but it's a great time to give it away. So get to your entries, everybody. We are excited to hear from you and look forward to any and all feedback and questions you have. And, yeah, let's go and get into a closer look. Welcome to A Closer Look, everybody. A Closer Look is a section we do every week where we take something that usually isn't necessarily newsworthy and just really break it down, look at a lot of the finer parts, and just give it a little bit more of our time and discussion so that we can give it a little bit more thought. And this is how we fill our show when there's no news, instead of just rambling on about random stuff that means nothing and has nothing to do with Warcraft.
Well, we do that when there is news, too.
Shh. Don't ruin it. Okay, so this week we're talking about the Timewalker system. Now, the Timewalker system is the Blizzard term that they've chosen to attach to making old dungeons and raids relevant. So think about, like, there's two different ways that they've looked at this concept, and that's either raising a dungeon up, increasing its level. So think of like the Molten Core Anniversary event, where they took something that was level 60 and made it level 100. And the other option that they've looked at is that making us weaker. So think of like Proving Grounds or Challenge Mode dungeons where they lower your gear's item level and stuff to make you, well, less than what you are so that you're more appropriately geared to make that dungeon or instance or whatever difficult. And that is what we are currently looking at. There's not a whole lot of examples besides the ones that I just gave you. So a lot of this is going to be tinfoil hats and just general discussion. So get ready. So
I'm ready.
First off, is this a feature that both of you guys want?
Well, I don't know what Evan thinks, but I would definitely be down for this. because it would give people more stuff to do. People always complain there's not enough to do in Warcraft. It's not really true. The problem is there isn't enough to do that's appropriately challenging and rewarding, even though there's a ton of content. And this would be a great way to bring that content back into the limelight and let players play through it in a challenging manner and still get some decent rewards.
And what about you, Evan?
Yeah, I agree. I think if properly implemented, this could be a really big boon to the game and really kind of change the game for veterans and new players alike. And I guess some ideas that we can talk about as we go into it about how they might pull that off. But as far as do we want it? Well, I think we'd have to see what they planned on developing specifically if for me to make that decision. But you know, my version of it, in my imagination, I want that. You know, but we'll see. We'll see what Blizzard does if they take the reins or hop on the saddle or spur the horse, or another euphemism for that.
Well, it's really hard to say what Blizzard's doing, because through the ages of Warcraft, pretty much since the very first expansion, this has just always been a request. This is just something that they've always wanted to have happen. Not necessarily from Blizzard, but from the player standpoint, of that we've wanted all of our old stuff to be relevant again, maybe for nostalgia reasons, maybe for more to do. Their favorite answer for the longest time was that the technology isn't there. And, well, we know that just simply isn't true anymore. They've proven that to be wrong. Between Molten Core and challenge modes and proving grounds and stuff, we know that the technology now is there. Their other excuse is they are working on bigger and more important projects. So probably raids, expansions, patches that have tons of content like 6.1. Do you guys really think that... does this tell us that it's just not really a priority for Blizzard? That it's just something that they're just kind of ignoring?
I would say 100% for sure that that's what they're saying. Because, I mean, let's look at this. They don't have this feature which has been requested. And they did give us Twitter integration and a selfie camera, which I don't think anyone asked for, ever.
But we asked for it with all the complaining we did in the PvP forums. We asked for it all right.
You asked for Twitter integration on the PvP forums?
No, I mean, like, you're asking for it as if you're, like, provoking a violent reaction in the sense that we were misbehaving and this is a punishment. It's a joke, that's all.
Well, the question that I have is that, like, you know, we assume, like, you know, that there's such a large outcry for certain things. So think of, like, you know, like PvP. There's tons of people that say PvP is terrible, PvP is broken, blah, 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 blah. But it makes me wonder how many people, in terms of the percentage of WoW players, are actually saying that. And it makes me wonder the same thing about Timewalker. You know, we constantly hear and read, oh yeah, I'd love to see that happen, you know. That's asked for by tons of people all the time. I mean, we just got done saying it, but I wonder how many people actually, in terms of, you know, the grand scheme of things, have actually said, yes, Timewalker would be something cool. Now, I also wonder who at all asked for Twitter integration into WoW or a selfie camera. But it does, you know, larger numbers might get a stronger response, and maybe those numbers just simply aren't there.
Right, and, you know, in the end, Blizzard's after their own ends, and when that lines up with players' ends, and desires and wants and wishes and hopes and dreams, that's great, and that's, I think, the case a lot of the time. You know, Blizzard are players themselves, the developers, I mean, and they want what's best for the game. They have their own ideas about how to make it better, and I think it's certainly improved with a whole lot of player feedback in the past. But in the end, this Twitter thing, I mean, I think people are trying to pull out the slap in the face card maybe sometimes. It's you gotta let them kind of do what they need to do in order to keep their company relevant and to keep WoW especially on the social network, to build their presence. I mean, that does benefit us in the end as players who like having a strong, vibrant, diverse community, especially as the game goes forward, where you don't want to see the game dying out while we still have a mind to play, of course. And, you know, so I'm not going to knock them for doing the Twitter selfie thing. It's, I think it's a smart move socially. And, you know, if things like Timewalker are things that will be just as good in 5 more years than it would have been 5 years ago. Except that the longer they wait, the better the technology is going to be, and the better they'll be able to pull it off.
This is assuming they pull it off correctly in the first place.
Oh, yeah.
Well, as much as Blizzard does polish things, and as hard as they do work on all of their projects and stuff, some of their projects do come out very, very bad. I mean, look at Diablo 3 when it first launched. That game was horrendous. So while we would like it to be that simple of just, give them the time and it'll happen well, it doesn't always necessarily apply. Blizzard does more things right than most companies, but they still have their very long list of we screwed up.
That's true. And then if you can look at it from developing Timewalkers not as a way to appease players who are asking for it, but rather as a way to draw in old players who miss the kind of old content and don't like that it's not relevant anymore, then that could be a chip that they play when it makes most financial sense to do so.
Or retain players.
Perhaps, yeah, same side of the different coin.
I mean, you give them more to do, people might stick around longer, because, there's apparently a lot of people that do, just leave from time to time.
Yeah, true that.
So, the next question, the next excuse is that Blizzard has said, we could probably make it happen, but what would be the point? And, they said that people already spend a lot of their times against, current endgame raids, and it wouldn't make sense to have everyone divided across the entire game, because Blizzard wants you playing whatever is current, whatever is now. So why would they want to design something that intentionally pulls people away from the stuff that they just put their time and money into?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure if that's a Blizzard saying, why would we ever do that kind of in a negative way, or if they're saying, give us what can we do to incentivize a system like this to make it worth the developmental effort. I'd like to frame it in the second way, but if they're saying things like, we want people to be doing the cutting edge content on the front of the game, so to speak, why would we ever draw people away from that is a kind of rhetorical question. I'm not entirely sure how I'd answer that. I might say the less people being on the front edge of the rating scene seem to be kind of pouring all of their WoW energy into it, and they wear out that content really quickly, much more quickly than developers can kind of fathom it and test it and develop it. And if there were less of an onus to be beating your head against the newest raid content every single week or every other day, depending on how often you'd like to raid, I think that would actually be a kind of a boon and a useful tool for developers to pace their content a little bit more intelligently rather than just pump out more cutting-edge raid content as fast as possible.
Okay. And then the last excuse is that we can't design that much gear, and we no doubt, you wouldn't do it if you were just getting, worthless level 70 gear in a level 100 raid. So what reward could we give that would be relevant enough for people to actually do it?
Well, in my experience in a WoW, you can give people literally any kind of reward, and they will bang their head against the raid eternally for it. I mean, I don't know about you, but there were a lot of people running Molten Core over and over and over again, suffering through it during the recent LFR times to try to get that pet or the weapon transmog. And the thing is, it doesn't have to be a gear reward. They could very easily give people pets, mounts. You could very easily use a currency. They could use a Pexis or make up a new currency to let people buy pets or mounts or maybe old gear or something like that. I know all you have to do is basically just say, here's a currency you get for doing these old raids. You can use this currency to buy tier 3 raid gear. That would instantly make it viable for a lot of people.
The thing on the Molten Core front, though, is that there were people running it over again for that pet and the transmog, but Blizzard would want to do things that gets a larger number of people doing it, and there was very, very, very few people that wanted to rerun Molten Core. Because... Well, go ahead.
The main thing you got to do then is just up the rewards. just make more of them available. Give people more for doing the raid rather than a small chance at getting a transmogrified pet. Increase the drop rates, put more pets in there. Or, like I said, just make it a currency so people can just grind out the currency and then they can choose whatever it is they want to buy with it.
Right. Well, let's talk about the difficulty first. Because they can't make this, cutting edge. Because, like, Molten Core was really, really difficult when it first came out in vanilla, and then the LFR wrecked a whole bunch of people because it was as difficult at level 100 as it was at 60, and a whole bunch of people didn't want to do it because it was really hard, and because it was really hard, it took a ton of time. And so, it was something that I don't want to say nobody, but there's a ton of people that didn't do it. But you don't want it to be too easy, because then it's just something meaningless that people run through. If you make it too easy, then there's no reason in making it, because people can just, solo the raids as they are. But fine-tuning all of this would require a large amount of Blizzard's time, and, which time is money, so it requires a lot of their resources just in general. So, I mean, while they wouldn't have to generate the assets for it, like the art assets or anything like that, we do know that the Warcraft team isn't, just all in one collective room. There's people that do the art assets at the same time that people are doing, the numbers and the mechanics and all of that kind of different stuff. So the people that do the tuning and the numbers, that would be completely pulling them off of something else unless you hired a new team to do it.
Yeah, I do suppose. And I don't want to make any claims that we can kind of distribute and come up with a better scheme for rolling out content using Blizzard's resources than they can themselves.
Well, I mean, just like the thing is, like, if something at level 100 is 3 times stronger on average than something that's level 70, whatever the math actually is, you can't just make everything in the raid 3 times more powerful, because that'll create horrible imbalances in some regards. There will be some things that just completely wreck compared to what they did originally.
Right, and I think you'd have to rebalance the system for both ends. You'd have to make our current PvE, I want to say engines, but I'm not a developer or programmer, and I know that's a horrible use of that term, I apologize. They'd have to develop a new engine, if you will, for how we damage our targets relative to our own level.
Formula,
and how
is that what you're looking
abilities, for? Yeah, but it's like combinations of formulas as they apply to the actual system at large. And if you rework that on the top end, then it might be a lot more scalable so that it'd be easier to kind of just smush a level or inflate the level in order to suit it, given difficulty.
So you think instead they should leave everything the level it is and set essentially like a challenge mode difficulty, which makes it where everything your damage numbers and stuff change?
Yeah, I mean, I think the most likely kind of path that they would take would be to inflate old low-level content up to current level or to some arbitrary level, like level 1000, for example, and just make it so that your proportion of your stats and your gear are relevant, but your actual gear levels are not at all. And I think that they'll scale up old content rather than scaling down players to the old content size, is because of the difference in... I guess that wouldn't make any sense.
Well, no, scaling down is generally considered to be the worst option for people that are reliant on a stat to be effective. My favorite example is like Shadow Priests and Boomkins rely on haste, and if you take away a whole bunch of their gear score, in which you take away a bunch of their haste, then you've taken away their effectiveness.
Right, and that's true. And there's also a thing about, like, I was doing $1,000 damage, now my Hammer of Justice hits for... I'm sorry, that's not a damage spell. Hits for 16 damage against Hogger in the Stockades. And that's... yeah, that's a little bit of a drag, too. Especially when your Arms Warrior was consistently out DPSing your Ret Paladin in raids, but now they both do the same damage, just because when you squish down all the numbers that much, there's no difference between a 34,000... crit and a 32,000 crit, for example, if that makes any sense.
Because now it's only 32 and 34 damage?
Right, or it gets even butchered further, so you're going to lose. It's like compressing a giant file or an image and then trying to blow it back up again is going to be all kind of warped. But I mean, you can blow up a small image and then polish it, if that's an apt analogy. I don't know anything about image editing either.
I understood what you were trying to convey.
I just think the point I want to emphasize is that I think when they say that technology isn't there, doesn't exist, I think we're taking a lot of stuff out of context. They built the Mists of Pandaria 5-mans, I imagine, or at least they finished them under the impression that they would be available as a challenge mode eventually. So they probably designed the encounters and the boss damage abilities and the mobs with that in mind. So it might be engineered completely differently than, say, Sunken Temple. And going back and kind of retrofitting Molten Core as like a fun holiday anniversary kind of special gig, might have been a whole lot of work for maybe in retrospect not that much benefit. I don't know how they feel about it. I don't know how much work actually went into it, to be honest. So maybe that was their experiment and they've decided that that's not worth it.
Well, and what I think by when they mean that the technology isn't there, isn't that they can't do it. It's just that, like, in just our conversation just now, we can see that figuring out the correct way to do this system to where it isn't, overpowered, underpowered, provides a challenge, etc., is so difficult that Blizzard probably keeps on looking at it and going, I don't know. Without, like you said, creating something all over again, it's just going to be so difficult to create something that is that doesn't look like a polished turd.
I don't know. I think it depends a lot on ambience, and I think a good exercise in discussing some of these old dungeons is realizing that a lot of the ambience kind of has staying power. And Florian can test me if I'm wrong, when we kind of decided generally that even in the stockades with the textures and the stones and updating a few of the boxes and things, it still feels very much like a dungeon. It does provide a kind of immersive experience, even though it's so dated.
But with something like this, the gameplay is the reason that people would go back or would want the Timewalker. Like, you want to feel that epicness of fighting Ragnaros again, which I will say that the Molten Core Anniversary event kind of failed on, but different conversation. With that, though, I mean, the ambience on the entire game holds up just because of its style. This, cartoony design holds itself up, and that's one of the reasons that I think WoW has survived, is because it gave itself this kind of like comic book cartoony style that allows it to live in an age of ridiculous 4K graphics. So I think that the problem is the gameplay and making sure that that is enjoyable enough for people to do it. What do you think, Florian?
Well, I don't think that requires a massive amount of work. Really, all you've got to do is just fiddle with the numbers a little bit. I mean, yes, some dungeons are probably going to be easier than others when you just use some sort of master algorithm to level players down or to level the content up. But, that's just going to happen. There are always dungeons that are easier or harder or have more broken mechanics than others. So I don't think that's really a valid reason not to do this. It's also something that shouldn't take a massive amount of resources because it's kind of a side activity. I'd understand the need for perfectly balanced dungeons if you were going to have this be the main source of gear or the main source of aggression. Because, obviously High Mall, Blackrock, those places need to be balanced properly. But if this is going to be mostly a side activity, and the rewards are going to be mostly things like mounts and pets and not really main gear rewards, it doesn't really matter if it's perfectly balanced. And to be honest, I wouldn't care if it's perfectly balanced. I would just want to play something that's moderately challenging and is something that I played from the past.
But moderately challenging is setting an expectation which could be very, very difficult to meet. Because moderately challenging is asking for tuning. And depending on how they just go about, like you say, tweaking the numbers, that could actually be very difficult to achieve.
Well, they don't need very tight tuning, is what I'm saying. As it can be loosely tuned and it'll be perfectly okay. An excellent example is right now a lot of dungeons at level. For example, like a lot of the dungeons that we talk about in our dungeon reviews, the lower level 5-mans, a lot of them have really excellent, interesting mechanics in their boss fights that could be super awesome. But the thing is, like, right now, they're getting killed way too fast, even at level, for players to experience any of those mechanics.
Yeah, they're completely irrelevant.
They don't need to be tightly retuned. You just need to make them just hard enough that those mechanics kind of come through. It doesn't require a whole ton of math and a whole ton of effort. Like, this can be sort of the, side project for the balancing team, if that makes any sense. Just like when they can get around to it, they kind of fiddle with these numbers a bit. And if they don't have time, they just stay on their main job. Because it doesn't matter if this is perfectly balanced or broken. Timewalker is just a just for fun thing, really.
Well, that goes on whether it's just for fun or not is completely dependent on the reward, which is what we'll talk about next. And it sounds like your idea for a system was very similar to mine, in which, because, I don't want a whole bunch of level 70 gear when I go do Black Temple again. In fact, when I do go do Black Temple, it's really annoying, and it's just like, well, at least it's worth something. But that was the biggest other question, though, is what reward can Timewalker give? And we'll go back to the example of the Molten Core Anniversary event. Those rewards were apparently not good enough for a lot of people. Because I know tons and tons of people that don't have a Gorehound. I am me, so I bit the bullet and dragged my face through it and got the Gorehound. But the pet wasn't worth going back in there for, and certainly neither was the weapon transmog. But apparently those rewards weren't good enough, and also those rewards were one-time only. Pet and transmog excluded. We'll speak for the Corehound since that was the guaranteed reward. So that, a good number of people might only go in once, do it only once, and then just never do it again and not bother anymore from there because, well, they got the reward. Which, if that was the system, would continue to just make everything decline because people would start to get less interested in it, already get the rewards that they care about, and then it'd just be impossible to find a group for it. So, trying to find a suitable reward that gets enough people interested is the difficult part. Because they already said they can't give relevant gear because they'll get too many gear sets out. If maybe one dungeon's easier than the other and everything's the same item level, so people will just be spamming this dungeon to get the gear so that they can beat the other one. You don't want old content that's been brought up to be more relevant in terms of gear than whatever your current raid is. So they can't give away current gear. So then we just go into, what's good enough to make you run it.
Yeah, I don't think you should try to reinvent the wheel. I think you should look at the people who are already running old content and ask yourself what they're running it for. Very small handful does it for legendaries. Very small handful does it for mounts. Very small handful does it for the transmog gear, right? So if we just stick to those big three, maybe not the legendary so much because we'd be talking about old raids. Yeah, I guess sure. Yeah, sure. So maybe give a more kind of guaranteed path to building the Blades of Azzinoth rather than running it until you never want to run it again once it drops, kind of thing, And that's really going to depend on implementation too. But yeah, reward system where you're able to get some of these rarer transmog sets like High Emperor or Morgraines. What's the chick with the funny hat in Scarlet Chapel?
Highmane?
Yeah, Highmane. White Mane Chapeau. I mean, she's got a really cool kind of outfit going on. Those Scarlet Crusaders have their transmog that I think you can kind of assemble almost exactly, but...
Yes, you can.
I mean, it's...
I have it on my priest.
How long did it take you to make it together?
total... Well, I will say now you can't get Whitemane's full get-up because she is now wielding Benediction. She used to be wielding a different staff, which is the Glowing Brightwood staff, which is a world drop BOE epic.
Right.
It doesn't sell for that much though, so I mean if you have the gold you could easily get it. But the bigger problem that takes more time or might prevent you from getting the full Whitemane set is that to get the correct pieces for her gear, you have to do a whole bunch of questing in the original Shadowmoon Valley. And if you've already done those quests and you didn't choose those pieces and you don't still have them, then those gear choices are just lost to you, and there's not very many alternatives.
Right, which is another reason I think this could be a pretty efficient system. Like, why do they discontinue that gear? Probably not a reason as good as reintroducing that gear as a reward would be a good idea. Sorry, I get mixed up in syntax. Yeah, for whatever reason it's not available anymore. I think making it available for the purposes of transmog, even if you're just using all the pieces to assemble a toy that puts you in a costume for 30 minutes with a 2-hour cooldown, wouldn't be game-breaking. And that kind of theme, like go to Razorfen Downs or Razorfen Crawl and work towards building a Quillbore costume kind of thing, wouldn't be a bad idea at all, honestly. And the way I'd want to see this implemented, if I might go on a tangent, is having these zones kind of lassoed together with their questing areas and immediate surroundings. Like, how many, or do either of you know how to walk into Razorfen Downs from the Barrens, for example?
Yes, I think.
Go try it. Go play the Barrens. It's amazing.
I'm not on the right continent. I'm on Northrend right now.
It's a ragged, underbrush, thorny mess, honestly, and it's full of tons of little camps. And it was a pretty decent struggle challenge to get into the entrance. While doing this quest, I think you're saving a guy from 3 different people, or burning some plans, or stealing some relics, that kind of thing. And I mean, it's challenging because you're surrounded constantly by all these bristleborers, and that was part of the dungeon, but that's been kind of omitted in this dungeon finder kind of context. And I'd really like to see, like an example was the Death Knight starting area. It is Hearthglen, as Hearthglen appears to us, geographically and as far as terrain, but they have a whole lot of phasing, these quest objectives, and then really exciting kind of events. And if going back and doing old content was like making a new Death Knight, I mean, that's a kind of cool, with the dungeon at the end of it kind of thing. Like, you have this instanced outdoor area where you could do a couple of the quests, use it as a kind of cross-server lobby, if you will, while you're matchmaking for a group to get in, depending on the difficulty, if these are even still soloable. You're going and doing quests and helping each other out, and all the content's scaled up, or everybody's scaled down, or the content and everybody's scaled up to 1,000, something, irrelevant. And you're doing all this fun questing, everything, while you're waiting in a queue, especially if you're a DPS person. I mean, the nod to them. And then you get the whole kind of picture. So people who are after the old content for the lore get to experience the entire kind of storyline without going and doing these trivial low level quests that no high level has any business doing. It can't really even enjoy a lot of the time. And they get to experience that, and then maybe instead of heavy gold rewards or useless gear rewards, you are building these kind of tokens that varies from zone to zone and lets you build something kind of relevant that would let you take it away afterwards, that doesn't affect the gameplay at max level at all.
Well, let's talk about the token real quick then, because we've all touched on this idea of a currency, a token, or something along those lines, because if you can't get the gear if there's nothing that they can just put in the dungeon, that'll make you interested in it, then if they put in this currency, because there's tons of things that they could sell with this. I mean, there's currently 198 unused mounts in Warcraft. They're in the game files. You can see them and all kinds of stuff. I put a link in the show notes to see all, nearly 200 of them. There's, some unexciting ones, it's just like a slightly different shade of horse. And then there's some that are really, really cool that it's just like, wow, why didn't that ever make it in the game? And, we'll probably never know. But there's, there's tons of battle pets, I'm sure, that I didn't look to see how many unused types of critters and battle pets, but I bet there's plenty. There's unique transmogs, toys. If we want to even take a look at stuff like the Black Market Auction House, there's, mounts that are no longer available. There's gear that's no longer available. If you look at, like the Tier 3 transmog that's very coveted on the auction house. And then, like Florian was saying, if you do this right, it could make people come back over and over and over again. And if you price it right, that's what'll make people interested enough. Because you got to make it where it looks attainable. So you can't make things. If each boss only drops one, and you make things cost 10,000 tokens, then people are just going to go, "That's not worth it." That takes way too much time and effort in comparison to the reward.
I think they're starting to reach a good balance as far as tokens that drop from bosses that progress a quest chain with the legendary, honestly. And I might be unpopular for saying so, but I think the pace of the elemental tablets and the impaired or abrogator stones was pretty solid, honestly. And if I was really after, for example, a full transmog sent from Ice Crown Citadel. I wanted that to be relevant, and I had to run it over and over again. But I want to run that as much as I had to run Highmaul in order to get my Imperator or my Abrogator Stones. If I was running for Shadowmourne, definitely. If I was running for just my 14P or Tier 14 set, if that's the correct number, that might be a little bit heavy, honestly. But maybe if I was running for a Tier 14 set and the one specific weapon, yeah, I could spend 5 or 6 weeks doing that every week.
Okay. And then what about things that, might even still be available in the game? So, like, you'll see every now and then, like, Mimron's Head or Invincible are available on the Black Market Auction House, and they always sell for gold cap. What about if something like that was available through these tokens? Now, obviously, you could still just run back and go to the old one. Maybe there's a chance in Ice Crown that the Lich King drops it. But if you want, if you haven't had any luck, you've been running it and all this kind of different stuff, you can just... if each boss drops 5 tokens and it takes, 1,000 tokens, that would require you kill, 200 bosses? Which, if you were running only Ice Crown, that would mean it would take, 15 weeks?
Yeah, which is a lot less than it was, or than it is considering, some people's luck.
Yeah, I mean, that's, 4 months where, you hear the people, "I've been running Ice Crown for 5 years," and it's like, I am so sorry.
Right.
So, I mean, it would give them an alternative.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it would be cool if the system I was thinking of, where you run Ice Crown Citadel for Ice Crown tokens, and then you buy your Ice Crown gear that way. But say you already have all the things you want from Ice Crown Citadel, hey, presto, you change those Ice Crown tokens for, timeless tokens or something.
Well, do they necessarily have to be a specific type of token, or could it be a general token, like a token of time or something like that?
Yeah, like a currency conversion type thing, in case you don't need the specific one. But I wouldn't want to discount the importance of running Scarlet Monastery if you want to get that Scarlet Warrior transmog, and I'd like those to be bought with the same kind of system.
So I shouldn't be able to run Ice Crown to get a transmog from Scarlet Monastery? Is that what you're saying?
But if you run Ice Crown and Scarlet Monastery and Razor Fen Downs and Crawl and don't use any of your tokens there, you can smash them all together and just have general tokens that you can use to buy maybe the more exclusive or rare mounts, or maybe things that aren't as story tied as other things. Maybe.
While that system almost makes sense, I think it's a bad idea. Just because, you want people to feel as though they can run anything to get whatever they want if you're going to do this system. So, if you think that the white main set is really cool, but there's nothing in it for anyone besides you, it's going to be ridiculously difficult to get a group for that. And if you can just easily make a conversion of the tokens into a general token, then why shouldn't everything just be a general token?
Well, it depends on if this is all going to be group-blocked content. What I was supposing originally was maybe for your armor pieces, you can just do that on the single-player kind of story mode, But if you want that weapon transmog to go with it to finish your set off, then you're going to need to group together. It's going to resemble more of a challenge dungeon, or maybe even like more of a scenario where there's an actual difficulty component, and it's kind of balanced against a 3-man team.
I must have completely missed when you suggested it'd be one player.
Oh, I never mentioned that part, I don't suppose.
Okay, I was like, because that is not something that I believe has been factored into anyone's mind as of now.
Right.
And I don't necessarily mean mine or Florian's, I mean in general. Where are you sitting, Florian?
It's difficult. I'm definitely pro-currency. I think a currency is the best way to solve it, because one of the main problems with old content, and one of the things that makes it really annoying, is the incredibly low drop rates of some of the things you want. Like the people who are going in over and over again trying to get invincible in Mimron's head. And a currency solves that problem because it allows you to save up for a particular thing. A currency also helps you solve another problem, which is going to be helping people group up for these things, because the thing is, like, right now it's not hard for me to go into a group for, say, High Mall or Blackrock Foundry, because a lot of people are doing that. Almost everyone is doing that. But when you've got every dungeon in the entire game available to you,
Right.
there's going to be a huge disparity in where people want to go. One of the ways Blizzard can solve that and is by making a currency that you get for killing these bosses in these Timewalker dungeons, and just give a weekly quest like we used to have back in Wrath of the Lich King. I don't know if either of you guys remember, but back in Wrath there was a weekly raid quest, which was awesome, and I don't know why they got rid of that, where you go in a particular raid, kill a particular raid boss, and you would get, I think, Valor points for it, if I remember correctly.
Well, they just reintroduced that with Sourfang or whoever your alliance person is coming into your garrison.
Ours is Murd and Bronzebeard.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Alliance scum.
The idea is you can have a weekly Timewalker quest, so it'll send people every week generally towards the same raid or dungeon, while also giving them some currency as a quest reward.
Well, okay, now my question is, though, so, like, if you give them this, so do you, one sentence at a time, do you think it should just be a general currency then, and not each dungeon area has its own currency type, like Evan was suggesting?
I think it should be a general currency. When you give each dungeon its own currency, that gets way too complicated, way too fast.
Okay.
That's too many dungeons, too many currencies.
Well, I've got a revision.
I could kind of see, like, maybe where you could say you can only buy items from a particular dungeon if you've completed that dungeon. Like if you wanted some of Whitemane's gear, you had to have done the appropriate dungeon.
That's really
that might work. Yeah, so
okay,
that
so I
would
can
go to
guess that.
when you go to the Timewalker store or whatever it would be, it would show you the items that you have available, and then there would be locked items, and it'd be like, you have to go do Wailing Caverns to get this if for some reason you want to wear Wailing Caverns gear.
Right. Oh, yeah, I would rather that.
What was the revision that you were wanting to mention, Evan?
How about, in order to unlock the Timewalker dungeon of your choice, you have to complete a introduction to the Timewalker quest where Chromie sends you back in time to when you were level 20 or whatever in Hillsbrad Foothills or whatever. Only everything's level 1000, like we said. And you are, like, progressing through this kind of quest line that might be in a large instance outdoor area where you're kind of reliving some of those big quest points and all this and that. At the end of that introduction, you unlock that particular dungeon, and you get the availability of daily quests in that outdoor area, and that might conclude with a boss quest in the corresponding dungeon or dungeons, whereby you can earn these pieces of gear for transmog and that kind of thing. So everybody will be kind of unlocking the dungeons in order to get as many possibilities maybe as possible for the tokens and the currency from doing the dungeon themselves, but there's also the associated area with all the questing and the lore, and that is a separate avenue for getting some of the transmog gear.
Okay. So if we go with this general token, and instead the availability of what you want is based off of what you've done and what's available to you, if everything is dropping this general token, does this mean that we there would need to be a cap on this. Like, remember how Valor had a weekly cap? You could only get like 1,000 a week or whatever. Would we have to institute something similar for this? Because otherwise, if like let's say Invincible costs 1,000 of these tokens, and everything drops the same token, which apparently is where we're sitting at on is the better system. What's stopping me from just running like every single dungeon and getting like 600 tokens, or because there's always going to be something that gives more of these tokens than less, which will draw people to them, which may or may not be a bad thing, but if you're wanting
more tokens per hour,
if you're wanting this system to last, then you have to figure out a way to make it so that people can't just, it's like, okay, I'm going to do nothing but Timewalker this entire weekend and just farm up 50,000 tokens by doing every single dungeon and raid in the Timewalker system, and then I'm just going to go buy all the things I want and I'll never do it again because, I've killed enough things to get all the crap.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that anybody wants it to turn into Miss Pandaria heroics for the Valor grind anymore. I don't think anybody wants to see that again.
Well, Valor was much more relevant towards like progression and stuff like that. You needed Valor, and especially for the stupid
but that made it worse.
Legendary quest line. Whereas Timewalker should be completely optional in all ways.
Well, the easiest way to solve the first problem, which is grinding it all out in one weekend, is simply lockouts. Just make a lockout. You can do a particular dungeon maybe once a day or once a week, depending on how much they need, to keep people from just grinding whatever the easiest, fastest dungeon is, and at the same time, to keep people from grinding all of their Timewalker points out in one weekend. Another option is to just make it a random thing, like a random daily. You get your Timewalker points when you do one daily that's a random Timewalker dungeon. And if you want to do a dungeon for fun, you can just choose a particular one, but you're not going to get like a whole bunch of points or anything like that.
I don't think we should stop people from doing something by any means, especially when it's not relevant to the gameplay. Like, I can understand heroic dungeon lockouts because you don't want people to gear up all heroic Warforged dungeon gear immediately, especially not in the first week of release.
So you're saying... Go ahead, Evan.
No, I think ideally they'd be able to craft an experience that is so fun people want to play it for hours on end, over and over and over again, and why stop them, kind of thing. Yeah, it's not like making Invincible all of a sudden extremely available is going to really upset that many players, and plus there's always this kind of this rolling tide of movement from things that are really exclusive to not all that exclusive to totally unexclusive as far as items and mounts and things. And I don't see any harm in giving a whole bunch of Ashes of Valar and Invincibles away if somebody wants to enjoy that content so much. I mean, it's kind of like challenge modes. We could run challenge modes till we're blue in the face and get all of our transmog gear in one afternoon or probably more like one weekend. And who's going to say, no, they just blew through all that content and they got the end reward and they did that too fast? I mean, who's going to say that?
Well, okay, again, one sentence at a time. First, before I forget, Florian, with the daily quest thing, are you suggesting that that's the only way that they can get points? Or is it like all bosses only drop one token, but the daily quest bosses drop 5 the first time you kill them each day or each week or whatever the time frame is?
Definitely the latter. Like, you don't want to discourage people from doing Timewalker, but just make it so that the most advantageous way to farm the points is to do it over time, rather than just sit down, do it all in one weekend, and then never do Timewalker again.
So make it where whatever is currently, call it like a rift in time or whatever, the time powers are more active in that area or something like that, gives you more of these, time shards or whatever. I'm just kind of speaking on whatever flows. Is that kind of where you're sitting at?
Something like that, yeah.
But you could go do any of the other ones and it would work just fine?
Yeah, you could do any of the other ones and it would work just fine and the bosses would drop whatever they would normally drop. But then you have an optional for you can do your like maybe a thing where it's like the first dungeon you do each day gets you this increased amount, or the first random Timewalker dungeon you do every day gets you this increased amount, so that people will be more likely to just do, maybe like a few a day rather than just farming a whole bunch at once and then just being done with.
Okay. And then, Evan. The problem with the challenge mode thing is that you can only get the rewards from them once, whereas the system that is being described by everyone is even if you get the reward you're seeking, so we've been using this trend of invincible, you should be able to, assuming you can find interest in something else, obviously, if invincible is the only thing out of the entire little market thing that you care about, then obviously that's going to be the only one that you can really go for. But it gives you continuous rewards if you keep doing it. So, I mean, if all the mounts cost, if the special ones like Invisible cost 1,000, but, you can get a basic different colored horse for 100, there's going to be tons of people with the collect 'em all syndrome, and, after they get Invincible, they're like, all right, well, now I really want to get all these random other little horses, because, that's what Warcraft is about, is collecting things that don't necessarily matter.
No, that's a good point, too. I think I probably would rather draw more parallels to the current challenge mode system than what's the opposite of fucking parallel? Sorry. I think when we approach a system in the current way we're doing so with like a currency, and it reminds me of kind of like Argent Dawn reputation and marks and tokens and things, and building rep with that and unlocking different tiers of rewards. And I think that's in the context of how gear and loot and vendors and things work right now. But I think the challenge mode system is one of the most novel systems that's been introduced to WoW PvE. And I think that is the kind of out-of-the-box system that breaks the mold, so to speak, that I think we need to look towards in perfecting a Timewalker or a similar type of system in the future.
Okay. Now, is that enough, though? Because obviously this system would be meant to be, like, I see this system being something that's extremely important when WoW is going to no longer receive expansions. So, like, when WoW is nearing its end, whenever that may be, I see this as being something that might give WoW life after death. So, is this system enough to keep people playing? Because, like, currently, this would give zero reward that affects gameplay in any way, which is, I feel is important. You don't want people to get raid advantages out of, having friends that want to run old content. But at that same time, a ton of people didn't want to run Molten Core because it didn't affect their raids. They're like, this is something that's super difficult, super time consuming, and it doesn't help me get any farther in my progression of High Maul or anything like that. Because most people didn't need the 640 helm. So is just all of these essentially vanity rewards enough to keep enough people alive and active in the game long enough? Not necessarily just, to keep Warcraft alive after it no longer receives support, but just in general? Or is it going to be a smaller group of people because, there isn't anything truly impactful about these rewards?
Right.
I'm trying to play devil's advocate here.
Right. No, I think the gameplay is going to have to be engaging, and that's going to be what keeps people playing. It's not going to be the rewards. I don't do raiding because I want to get the raid gear. I don't think very many people do that at all because they want to get the high item level. I don't think that's an end. I think the end is doing the content and having that content be challenging and really stress your skills.
Would you do it though if it gave no loot?
If they do what?
Would you raid it? Would you be doing heroic Blackrock if it gave no loot?
Well, no, probably not.
You do it for the loot. You just enjoy the challenge.
No, I enjoy the loot. I do it for the challenge.
I question that.
It's hard not to split hairs there, but if I can condense it at all, it's probably not that the loot is the end. The loot is kind of a means to a more distant end. Like, I only like loot in that it makes me more resilient to future challenges that are stronger. I don't like the loot because it's shinier, because it gives me high numbers in my character panel. It opens up more challenges for me. So the loot is more of a key to extra adventures, and it's not really a treasure at the end of the adventure. The treasure is a good feeling, the yelling and shouting and the endorphins and all this stuff that comes from a successful boss kill.
Okay, so would you keep playing then if you had killed Mythic Blackhand?
I can't imagine being in that mindset at all. I mean, I've not even killed normal Blackhand, and I'm already running out of steam on Blackrock Foundry.
See, and this is where I raise a whole bunch of those questions, because if it's about the challenge, but the challenge is wearing on you, so instead you go and get more loot to get more challenge, it's kind of this weird paradox that you're putting yourself into, of that you need the loot, but like you say it's for the challenge, but if there was no loot, you wouldn't bother with the challenge.
No, without the loot, the whole challenge aspect and the gameplay aspect completely unravels, but not because it's the reward necessarily.
But what would be the point, like, just by that mindset, though, as soon as someone had finished something, they would quit playing. Whereas there's tons of people, it's like, alright, we beat, Blackhand, so we'll just, see if we can farm it next week. And then they just keep doing that.
Right, well, they're doing that for, I guess the next rate tier, as many people as highly geared as possible, just to have the edge, I suppose, again.
But that doesn't affect endgame. I don't know. That's kind of a little bit different. But I mean, there was tons and tons and tons of people that were still running tons and tons and tons of Siege of Orgrimmar, even after it had been out for a year. And it wasn't even necessarily for the challenge at that point. We had killed Garrosh God knows how many times on heroic difficulty. So, and tons of us had killed him on normal, and, difficulty changed, in Siege of Orgrimmar. That was when Mythic became a thing. But even after that, you still kept playing. You still kept, killing him anyway, because it was more for the loot than it was the challenge. The challenge is only there the very first time you kill him. And then after that, you keep doing it for the loot.
I don't know. I mean, it's almost like we need to have an entirely separate discussion just for loot. Because we kind of traversed into that territory and we're getting bogged down here.
Well, the thing is that if they put too much, if they're focusing on the challenge and not the loot, then people won't do it. But if they focus on the loot and not the challenge, then people get the loot too quick. And then it'll die. And this is a system that if it dies, there's going to be a lot of people that are sad because they won't have the population to do it. Does that make sense? You have to have people to do this? Imagine back to the days of calling for people to meet you at a meeting stone in a dungeon, and there's no one around that wants to do it.
Right.
I don't know. I just question on if this concept of tokens and vanity rewards would be enough, or if there needs to be something else, is the reason that I ask. What do you think, Florian, before we move on?
Well, it may be enough, but I'm not 100% sure on that. I think it depends heavily on how you handle the scaling. For example, if you scale everything up to our current level, then no, it probably won't be enough because you won't have enough max level players willing to do this if there's no loot. However, if you scale the player down to the level of whatever dungeon it is, then you can use players that are at that level to plug in to the dungeon and fill out the roster. For example, if you've got, say you want to do, Shadowfang Keep, let's use that as an example, and you're level 100, you would get scaled down to 24. If any other level 100 players want to do it, they get scaled down, and players who want to do that at that level just get plugged straight into the dungeon with those level 100 players.
Do I lose all of my level 100 abilities?
Yeah, you would. Well, if you got scaled down, your abilities would get scaled down too. Final Fantasy XIV does this. with great success. It works really well, but that's kind of baked into their game design from the beginning. So I don't know how it would work for WoW, where the dungeons weren't designed for that kind of scaling down of players.
Well, my question is, like, if I get my level, 75, my level 50 talent as an elemental shaman, if I get elemental blast, or let's level 90, whatever, and I get scaled down to level 54, do I still have elemental blast?
No. Of course not. Like,
God, no.
If you get scaled down, your abilities have to get scaled down too, because if they just scale down your level, it's not going to work. You're just going to be ridiculously overpowered if you can keep all your level 100 abilities full rotation going. So, if you get level scaled down, your abilities would have to get scaled down too.
I would never step in, ever.
Well, I have lived this in Final Fantasy XIV, and I think it works great.
Nope. Couldn't do it, wouldn't do it.
It definitely takes some time getting used to, because you have to change your rotation on the fly, depending on what dungeon you're in. Which is interesting. It adds an extra bit of challenge to the gameplay, in my opinion.
I don't agree at all. Just because we have, maybe for, the raids, because, there's tiers of things at those raids and stuff like that. But, I mean, for, the dungeon stuff, it just wouldn't work. It would be so lame. You have so few abilities at level 24. I don't know how Final Fantasy XIV works, but I know that you just don't have nearly as many fun toys to play with. And while that might make it interesting, they also made Heroic Dungeons and Cataclysm very interesting by making them difficult as crap. So I don't think that taking away my abilities to make it, and forcing me into something less than the full game is how I would picture that. If I'm level 100 and I go into a level 24 dungeon and I get stuck back to level 24 and I don't have all of my stuff, for one, my bars are going to be completely jacked. But two, that's just, you took all my toys away. Why would I want to do this? Whereas when they made it higher level, I got to keep all my toys and it still made me fight.
Well, when you do that, it's going to have two problems. The first being that you're not going to have enough of a player base unless you have really good rewards, because you won't have lower level players that you can plug into the party. And the second problem is, at that point, it's going to require extra tuning. If you level the players down, you can leave the tuning as it is. But if you level players up,
I know what you mean.
Then if you level the players, if you leave the players at the current level and level the content up to them, you can't just increase the numbers, because it's not just a question of bigger numbers. You have more abilities, you have more skills you can use. So in order to make it properly challenging for a level 100 player, they would have to add more mechanics, which is going to be even more tuning, even more effort. So unless Blizzard has an infinite workforce of people to balance stuff, I don't see it being financially feasible to scale the content up rather than just scale the players down.
I don't like it. The more we talk, the more I dislike this system. Concept of Timewalker in general. I started this conversation wanting Timewalker to happen, and now I don't like it anymore.
It's not a perfect solution, but that's just how it is.
I think the problem is that there isn't a solution. The way that this is starting to look is that Timewalker itself might as well be an entire new friggin' game.
Yeah, maybe it might look that way to us in 10 more years or wow.
Timewalker. It's an entire expansion because they had to spend that much time making this work.
That's not actually a bad idea.
Oh, God. I'm moving on now. Welcome to the review, everybody. Every week we review something, whether it's a 5-man dungeon, a raid, a class, a spec, a battleground, a zone, a quest line, something. This week, because we knew we were going to be devoting a large amount of time to the conversation we just moved away from, which is Timewalker, which we got zero progress on, in my opinion. We will be reviewing something smaller, yet still very epic, and that is the raid Onyxia's Lair. Onyxia's Lair is a small cave system located in the southern parts of Dustwallow Marsh. It is home to Onyxia and her guards, the remaining members of the insidious Black Dragon Flight. They're also are... Wow, this is terribly written. There is also her brood of new eggs is hidden there, awaiting maturation. Should anyone ever threaten Onyxia within her lair, within distance of her precious eggs, her wrath would be terrible beyond comprehension. This raid was also popular at the beginning because, well, it was one of the first raids, and, Onyxia did a whole bunch of bad stuff that, unfortunately, we don't get to experience anymore. We split the review section into 3 parts: ambience, gameplay, and lore. Ambience being what you hear, what you see, what you feel. Gameplay, numbers, mechanics, loot, etc. And then lore, of course, is the story. WoW would not exist if it wasn't for the fantastic story that was born of it from Warcraft 3 and was continued on. So it is a very important part of all of the dungeons and everything that we do. Ambience. Evan, would you like to take us into that?
This place is pretty much a cave in a middle of a swamp. Very dry for being a cave under a swamp, but I'll give them that. It's really windy and curvy. It almost looks like the stone was kind of melted, like it was burrowed not by clawing hands, but by molten hot breath, which is understandable, I suppose. And walls are kind of smooth in the same kind of fashion. It's very kind of twisty-turny, and it gives you a serpenty kind of feel. So I think they, hit on all those kind of marks as far as Dragon's Lair. I feel like, although subtle, it does read as Dragon's Lair more so than, Mole Den, which I think is probably a good stroke. Or natural geological formation. It's another kind of cave that we have here in Warcraft. But inside, I guess just the boss arena is pretty cool. It's very much like a cracked and broken fiery pit, and I like the clutches of eggs behind the stalactites and stalagmites and stuff. It's very jagged and toothy, which is even more of an allusion to the dragon inhabitants. And I think that overall it's pretty effective. I mean, it's short and sweet. They didn't really pull out any of the stops for excessive embellishment or flourishing, but it, as far as setting the tone for a pretty epic encounter, I think it does the trick.
Right. It's pretty fantastic. The music is very calm, which is surprising. I mean, considering, and I don't know, maybe it's because you're coming up on the dragon. Very soft little bit of drums here and there with just a little bit of like heart quickening every now and again. With like a small horn or something that blows in the background. The thing that surprises me, I want to know who's been in here. Because as you go through the tunnels and stuff, there's like skeletons and charred corpses that are, frozen in fear and stuff like that. Who was in here? How did you get in here? Like, I mean, originally you had to do this ridiculously long, just arduous quest line to get the, what is it called? The
Draconian Pendant.
Draconian Pendant. In order to open the door to get inside. How are these people?
Drake Fire Amulet.
Drake Fire Amulet. I wanted to say Hellfire Amulet, but I knew that was Diablo. So it just makes me curious of who these people were. But it does set this kind of like dreadful overtone of the whole thing, because there's dead corpses everywhere. Some that are skeletons, some that are just the husks that have been burnt in their form. What about you, Four? What do you think on the ambience?
I think the ambience is pretty good for what it is. It's got a really cool, fiery look to it. I have already mentioned the boss room floor with this cracked appearance where you can see the lava glowing through the floor, which I think is awesome. And while it's not strictly part of the dungeon, the entrance door in front of the dungeon portal, you got this little... I can't really call it a sort of a hill, I guess, that has this wicked, awesome skull-like face on the front of it that you have to go through to get into the portal. I think that thing's excellent. The first time I saw that, I was like, that needs to be on a heavy metal album cover. And it looks great, and is one of the most awesome doors in World of Warcraft. Definitely one of the top 5 most awesome doors.
By the way, is no one else concerned when you walk into Onyxia's little main lair that the roof is like crumbling and dropping sand down all over the place? It literally looks like it's about to fall.
Yeah, it's, so far as I can tell, like, it's probably just like some random crap that Onyxia burrowed out. It's not really a professionally a professionally built operation going on
It's
there.
not a true dragon slayer, considering she's lacking a giant mound of gold.
That's true.
Do we even have a dragon that fits that trope in Warcraft?
No,
I don't think so.
Not at all.
As far as I can tell, all of the dragons seem to not care for material wealth, which is kind of odd.
Huh.
No, I don't know.
I just realized that dragons in Warcraft don't have hordes. Interesting.
Yeah. The Black Prince might have one because he was charging me a heck of a pretty penny to replace my cloak and gems and things like that in Pandaria, so I don't want to go that far.
Well, he's built one off of our hard work.
Yeah, seriously. I don't know what dragon has it, though.
Interesting. But no, and it's very simple is the word that I'm going to do. And it by WoW standards and like with what Blizzard has done in the past, I mean, for being a one raid dungeon, it definitely even kind of feels like a one raid dungeon. Very simple, just, you know, stone textures, spikes like Evan was talking about. There's not a whole lot here, is what I think I'm trying to get at. But they did do well with what they had in this very small space. It does make me wonder, though, because there's lava all over the place and like there's lava underneath the floor and stuff like that. How it almost acts like this is a wannabe volcano, but there's no volcano nearby.
No, I wouldn't be surprised if Onyxia just used her breath to heat up that rock so much that it's actually a kind of a waterbed of molten lava underneath that, and that's what she uses to incubate her eggs.
That she's
which probably-
generated herself.
Yeah, she like warmed it up, you know, breathed fire constantly into the stone, and now it's all glowing red hot, just like a hot coal. And then she just lays on top of that, goes to sleep, digests her meal of adventurers, and then waits for her brood to hatch. That's why I imagine would be the source of all the fire. I mean, it's a fire dragon. They might seek it out, but then again, they also might bring their own heat to the party.
Sure. Okay. So, what would you then give, Evan, your grade on ambience?
C+. I mean, yeah,
Why so low?
not going crazy. I mean, they didn't really try to show off. You know, they didn't. I mean, they covered the bare minimum, and they did it well. You know, so I'll give them the average grade for doing the bare minimum, but a plus sign, because I feel positive about their execution. It's not like they did the bare minimum and failed, which would be a little more embarrassing.
And what about you, Florian?
I'm going to give it a B+. It looks very good. It looks like what it's supposed to look like. Very fiery, very cavey, very spiky, very dangerous. Textures and stuff, effects are a little older, but, you know, it's a dungeon from vanilla. Like, considering how bad some vanilla dungeons look, I think this place has aged quite well.
Well, it's because it's stone. I've mentioned it multiple times in the past that stone textures live a very long time because it's pretty hard to mess up stone.
Yeah.
I will be sitting on a B- for my grade, not a B equal sign, a B-. For pretty much the same reasons that both of you stated. It doesn't wow me in any way. Get it? Wow, because it's Warcraft? Anyway,
Oh, yeah.
You can punch me later. But it's also, it doesn't like make me go, oh god, can I just look at something else, anything else? Oh, there, that, yeah. So it's there. I mean, even the music. I don't know if this is still the original music from Vanilla. I actually have zero idea. But I mean, again, the music, the score isn't exactly like whoa. But I mean, at least it's an okay tone. Let's go into gameplay. Florian, would you like to step us into gameplay, please?
Yes, there's not a lot of gameplay going on here just because there's not a lot of game here. It's an incredibly short dungeon. The trash is pretty boring, doesn't do anything that I found particularly interesting. But then again, I have not done this at level since Wrath of the Lich King, so I went in there this weekend to check it out, and it was it's not the same when you're playing through it at max level, let's put it like that. And really, Onyxia is not a terribly complicated boss either. By vanilla standards, perhaps she was challenging, but there's not really much. All you have to do is, you know, obviously there are the mini whelps, that you do not want to get feared into. And you have to avoid our deep breath, not stand in the fire. It's very simple, very standard mechanics. There's nothing very complicated about the fight.
You know how amazing this dungeon would be if you could not stand on the cracks on the floor? Like, if you had to avoid all the cracks on the floor that are, kind of there. Anyway,
that would make things...
Continue on. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It would make things more tricky, but right now there's just not much there. I mean, like I said, by vanilla standards, it's probably a pretty good boss. But by our standards now, it's just very lacking in gameplay. Like, the worst thing that could possibly happen to you is you get knocked into the whelps, which, if you're standing in the right place, simply should not happen. So, yeah, I don't think there's that much gameplay here to say that much about.
Well, and, like, she was really difficult when she first came out, but that was back in the time of needing resistances and stuff like that, and you could easily get overwhelmed by the whelps, which, now, I mean, if you want, you can run through the clutch and just make them all spawn out and, have this adorable little army of angry whelplings behind you. But, I mean, she wasn't irrelevant when she was around.
Beware.
I'm in there right now. Normally when we do the review, I run through so that it's nice and in there. And I just ran through the entire clutch, and I probably have, like, what looks to be 300 little whelps just flying behind me as I run, and it's ridiculous looking.
Painful memories.
It looks like a stupid number of just, like, little pointy yellow things floating around. Because originally the whelps were extremely difficult to manage. One thing that I do want to say, though, in regards to gameplay that makes this dungeon still relevant is that I don't believe she did originally, but Onyxia drops a mount. She drops the Onyxian Drake, which, is kind of her color, has, the extra horns like the dragon aspects do. Think of, like, the Lifebinder's mount, and, how it's a little bit more unique on the head and all that kind of stuff, and it looks like her, which is very cool. I enjoy getting mounts that are akin to what they are. Oh, you do have to dodge the stuff on the ground. The cracks do spew up with lava. I was like, I'm pretty sure they do. Maybe I'm just hoping that they do. No, she stomps the ground and lava spews up out of them. I don't know if it does damage, though. I'll see.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, it does.
Oh, yeah, it does. Devin's like, yeah, it'll kill you dead.
Not you personally.
Yeah, maybe not me. I would be impressed, though, going into that Timewalker conversation again. So, for me, though, like, she actually doesn't have very many mechanics. Of course, she's a very standard dragon. Don't be near the head, don't be near the tail, avoid the fire breath, avoid the fire. She's kind of one of the things that defined, dragon rules in terms of Warcraft. What you should and what you shouldn't do.
Well, yeah, she was the very first dragon raid in Warcraft, if I remember correctly.
And certainly one of the most evil, considering the things she did to Stormwind, which we'll get into in just a moment. So, Florian, what would be your gameplay grade?
Well, I never played it in vanilla, so I don't know how super cool and challenging it was then. But based on my current viewpoint, I'm going to have to give it a C.
Okay.
It's okay, but it's not nearly to the level that I expect from a raid boss.
And Evan?
I'm going to give it an A.
You're going to give it an A?
Yeah, I mean, in context of
Well, and there's also a lot of people that got to do this in Wrath of the Lich King for the 5-year anniversary.
Right. I didn't do it during the 5-year anniversary. I did do it in vanilla, and I mean, a lot of the subtlety of the challenge does kind of fade away after they changed the system incredibly as much as they did, especially with regard to tanking. But as a quick rundown, there are a bunch of things you had to pay attention to. One of them was, of course, the tail swipe was probably one of the biggest offenders of raid strategies. You had to split your entire 40-man group into 2 sides and make sure all the sides had healers that were covered. The melee DPS are standing on the back foot and no closer, no farther. The hitbox is really kind of unpredictable. Sketchy. I mean, it's like a phantom, honestly. Like, we didn't have any DPM, so you don't know exactly when you're in the danger zone. Plus, if the tank sidesteps, I mean, it could put you at risk. I mean, it's a
you could just be dead.
Margin of error, exactly. And no, you don't die. You get walloped into the egg clutch, and then your entire raid dies. So it's not even just on you.
You just stand very, very still, is all.
Back in World of Warcraft Classic raid meta, you had to have dwarf priests because they had fear ward.
Yep.
And actually casted a fear on the main tank, and if you didn't have a fear ward, it would
bellowing roar, I believe.
Yeah, it would drop aggro to the next highest, and this reveals a kind of really intense WoW raiding mechanic that has since gone the way of the dodo, which was threat management. And I think Cruel and the Burning Crusade was one of the last iterations of this. I'm not sure if it followed us in the Lich King too. The second highest person on threat was an important position to hold. You had to manage your threat very well in order to make sure you never surpassed the tank, but you were on top of the next highest DPS, and that was the off-tank's job back then. So, yeah, you had to be there in the second, and you had to manage your threat, and all of your DPS had to make sure they were soul-shattering and ice-blocking to make sure they managed their threat too, because if you pulled aggro, I mean, and you cast the Fire Breath on all of the healers in ranged, I mean, that was curtains. So there's a lot of these kind of intricacies that do not translate anymore, and that, is kind of
sad.
Just sad but true. And then, yeah, the deep breath, I just have fond memories of that because I had no idea. It was like, we had Thoughtbot, and that was basically it. There were no Fat Boss guides. What do you do during the deep breath? Do you run to the sides? Do you run to the middle? Do you look where she's aiming and run to the opposite side? I mean, it was chaos.
You panic and die. That's what you do.
There's no rhyme or reason. But the prevailing wisdom was just to run to the sides of the cavern, and that's where you would, probably be safe. Yeah, put dots on Onyxia and then run to the side of the cavern for deep breath. And then if you survived, fantastic. Hopefully we have at least 30 of us up for the second phase, on the ground.
Right.
And so a little bit of nostalgia, a little bit of taking the encounter out of context and putting it back into the old classic context where some of the mechanics make more sense and actually contribute to the difficulty of the encounter. And then also being such a kind of key reference point for, big boss, encounters in the future, or in the present now. I feel like it deserves an A for the gameplay because I think it was overall really well executed above all else, even if it wasn't interesting, which I think it also was.
I gave it an A-, much for many of the same reasons as Evan did. I did not play it in vanilla. I played it in Wrath of the Lich King, and it definitely wasn't the hardest. I'm sure it was in vanilla because raiding back then was ridiculous, but it wasn't the hardest in Wrath. Even the deep breath wasn't that punishing, but it was still a great dungeon. It was quick, it was simple, but it still had enough challenge in it for what it was, which I really approved of, because they managed to make some, we all remember just going in and beating the bejesus, we all is a very relative term, but we can remember just running in and smashing, what was his name, Magtheridon, underneath,
Hellfire Ramparts?
Yeah. Underneath Hellfire Citadel, he was like a loot pinata. You just went in, killed his trash, smashed him up, and then left. You're like, alright, I'm gonna go kill Magtheridon for the week. And Onyxia was the same size of raid, just a little itty-bitty little bit of trash, and then a boss, and then that was the end of the raid. And she was much more, for being something from the expansion before and then being in the expansion after, she was so much more relevant in all ways than Magtheridon. Magtheridon just got ran over by players. And he was much less interesting at the same time. We'll talk about him in some other time. So I have to give her an A- in terms of gameplay. And also, she got a lot of really cool looking loot, including a mount. She's got, the Judgment Helm, and, she's just got cool loot, which, that gets bonus points from me. So, let's go into lore. Florian, assuming your general research, did you research the lore for Onyxia?
I did my general research on the lore for Onyxia. That is correct. So, I'm going to focus mostly on the specific lore that resulted in her coming to Onyxia's lair and us being there and killing her, because that's kind of the whole point. Even though there is much more going on with Onyxia. Pretty much, she's very sneaky and manipulative and likes to mess around with human affairs, specifically Stormwind's affairs, where she posed as the lady, I can't remember her first name. It started with a K. Prestor, something Prestor. Katrina Prestor?
Oh, I don't know.
Prestor.
I just always referred to her as Lady Prestor.
Oh. No, she totally had a first name. And it also started with K. I just don't remember what it is. So, yeah, and she was part of the whole nasty business where the masons who built a lot of Stormwind weren't getting paid. And that also plays into the whole Defias lore, and it gets really complicated. Basically, she got found out. People realized she was a dragon and up to no good. And then you go and you kill her and bring her head back on a bike, and everyone is super happy about it. And that pretty much boils down the lore for Onyxia's Lair.
Well, it goes much more in depth than that, but it goes into a whole bunch of other stories. Like, I mean, she helped get rid of Varian. If I remember right, she's also partially responsible for the reason that Varian's wife is dead.
That's true, but I'm trying to stick as closely to having to do with the dungeon we're talking about as I can. Because there's a lot of Onyxia lore, just in general.
Well, and unfortunately, a ton of it now is lost. I mean, Lady Prestor doesn't even exist in the game. Onyxia's Lair is only here because it was the 5th anniversary celebration thing for Warcraft. So there was no quest or anything involved with going to Onyxia's Lair when it came back in Wrath. So there isn't any lore that you can find anymore unless you look it up, because the dungeon is technically outside of time and consideration of things. It doesn't even follow the normal rules of if you go back and do it, you're doing it during when that would have been in time, because that's the way Blizzard explains you being able to go back and kill the Lich King, is that if you go back and kill him, essentially nothing with Miss Pandaria has happened yet for that specific instance in time. But that doesn't even apply to Onyxia's Lair, because that instance in time has actually passed now. So, Onyxia's Lair is just a celebration, and none of the lore for it even can be achieved in any way anymore. Which is unfortunate, because it was one of the more immersive, informative, and enjoyable attunement quest chains that existed. But, I mean, game that's 10 years old, time goes on. So, Evan, did you have any opinions on the lore?
I just wanted to give a nod, but you already did show to the attunement quest chain, which was one of the cooler kind of exploratory go all over the world quest chains, but still possible for the entry level raider back then to get done without feeling like you're trying to assemble Thunder Fury, Blessed Blade of the Windseeker, or anything. So, but dang, yeah, we're really reaching back into the annals to recall anything even about it, except that what we were a big part of that for the Alliance. Yeah, I was playing my gnome at the time. Was like Reptar. What's the guy's name? Actually, I might have been on my horde character that time because I had both of them leveled up at 60. Our half orc, half ogre friend from
Rexar.
Yeah. He was actually part of the quest chain, maybe just for the Horde. I'm not entirely sure, but he was wandering around in...
I believe he was Horde only, considering he's champion of the Horde.
Is he really now? I'm just behind the times, or maybe I'm ahead of the times. This is back in...
considering he got champion of the Horde back in Warcraft 3, the Frozen Throne expansion.
Desolus is where you hang out. But yeah, so, I mean... really kind of cool. Go get this, go get that, talk to this person, and view this with that. Now you got your pendant, which will cause the maw of the cavern to open, and then you venture forth. It added to the kind of excitement of going in there to begin with, and then getting your first kill is kind of like a rite of passage. You feel like a badass, even though you're wearing a quest screen and a couple of blues from your dungeon set, and you're about to go into a raid dungeon. it makes you feel like you kind of earned it. You know, if you can get that Drakefire pendant, then that's all the keys you need, and it's a lot more satisfying than just trying to make the cut to get into Molten Core Blackwing Lair. I mean, they're saying who's got their pendant, you know. Doesn't have anything to do with lore though, but the story was really involved and enjoyable. I don't see the like of it really very much anymore. I mean, the legendary questline is similar, but it's so broken up into easily digestible pieces that it's hard to kind of really get excited about it.
So what then would you grade lore?
I do remember Press Store and everything back in my Alliance days. And given the whole kind of really pervasiveness of the story throughout the Alliance capital, and I think also several quest lines in a couple of different zones were also making allusions toward the same drama that was unfolding, especially the Black Dragonflight, considering it's so tied up with that Black Dragonflight storyline that of course culminated in defeating Nefarian, or was it Neltharion, in Blackwing Lair. I'm going to give it a high grade because Onyxia fit kind of seamlessly in there. It provided a glimpse of that Black Dragonflight drama, even if you weren't rating at that level, which was hard for a lot of people at the time. Yeah, I'm going to give it a solid A.
Wonderful. Florian, as our resident newer player.
As the resident lore player, I'm going to give it an A as well. It's really important lore. Onyxia's had her hands in so many things in vanilla that it wasn't even funny. She was a very core lore character. And even though there wasn't that much lore involved with the dungeon itself, the very fact that she is in it and that you fight her in it is a very big deal. So I think that deserves an A.
I am actually going to give it an A+. Unfortunately, this is from a little bit of my own bias. Like, if I had to look at it purely from, like, today's standpoint, it would, get, an F. Because for a player that came in with this expansion, there is zero lore that you can actually find in the game for Onyxia, which is extremely unfortunate. The only thing you can get is, the quest after you turn in her head. But her lore, I'm having to just weigh all of Onyxia's lore on her lair, since there is nowhere else that I will be able to give it credit. Because she is entwined in so many things. And, even if some people scoff at her coming back in Blackwing Descent, you know what? I enjoyed seeing her come back again because she is one of the all-time iconic bosses of Warcraft, and she has done so many things across the years, and she's in books, she's in comics, she is even though Ragnaros is one of the more recognized faces of villainy in Warcraft, because he's a much more unique model compared to, just some dragon, in terms of what you see, Onyxia is so much bigger than Ragnaros can ever be. And with that, she gets an A+ from me. Because she's not just bad, she's also smart, and she also has goals. And they're real goals that are not just, let's destroy everything goals.
Oh, yeah, purged by fire, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, she is, aside from being dead, a perfect villain in so many ways. So, she just gets big old points from me. Which, this is very rare from us, because with the way this is looking, this is sitting almost right at an A-, which I did not expect something so short to get such a high grade from us. B on average in ambience, B+ in gameplay, A in lore. Sounds like B+, A- right in that territory. So yeah, congratulations, Onyxia. You win. I'll be interested to see if we ever give anything A's across the board. That'll be an interesting day. I don't know what that might be.
That's Crown Citadel.
We haven't done that yet. We'll see. I don't know.
We'll see.
I might be able to be an asshole about it. One little minor bonus discussion I wanted to mention is just that I kind of miss attunements. And I don't miss being locked out of a raid, not being able to do them because I haven't done the attunement. But I just miss, like, Onyxia now has no meaning. Whereas if you did the attunement to get in here, there was so much build up to this, so much story and so much epicness that made this feel like a raid. I mean, in a way, the quest chains through Draenor are the attunement for things like Heimal and Blackrock Foundry. Blackrock Foundry especially. Because, you get the interaction with, like, Blackhand and stuff in Talador, and it just, that gives you the build-up that attunement's used to, and I really hope that continues on in a stronger fashion. Because I feel like raids need to be given purpose. Outside of just, they're full of fun mechanics and loot pinatas. What do you guys think?
Yeah, it's kind of a bittersweet memory, doing attunements and everything. On the one hand, it was really fun and gave you a better glimpse and like a more complete look at the lore surrounding an area and let Blizzard do its fair share of storytelling and a sort of introduction to a dungeon before they granted you access. On the other hand, it was really annoying when you tried to do a run and it turns out one person wasn't attuned and you can't figure out who it is and they don't know because everybody's a noob and, it wasn't a perfect system either. So it was almost like an obstacle as much as it was a kind of cool feature. On the whole, I think it worked out well, and I wouldn't mind seeing a modified attunement system these days, just because I kind of have the time, and I wouldn't mind doing kind of a fun quest line, grouping up some guildies and knocking it out. But if, like, using the Pandaria cloak as an attunement for Odos, and on the Timeless Isle, I mean, that was, if the cloak didn't do anything except unlock his sanctuary, that would be a huge drag because of all the work and all the time that had to go into getting that cloak. And if you think of an attunement on that scale, then I think you're going to have a lot more people say, no thanks. Maybe make it optional and that'd be fun. But you know how much players like getting, forced into doing this or that.
Sure. I don't know. Anyway. Welcome to the end of the show, everybody. Thank you for sticking it out with us through this very interesting couple of hours. As always, if you'd like to contact the show, we love your feedback. We love your questions, no matter how weird or out there they are. You can contact the show via our email, which is at thecastbar@gmail.com. You can contact us via Twitter, which is at CastbarPodcast. You can contact us via phone, 508-738-2278. You're also more than welcome to leave a comment on any of our YouTube videos. In addition, you can find all of our old shows on YouTube, iTunes, and Stitcher. If there's anywhere else that you would like them to be, please let me know, because I don't know anywhere else that they can go. All of the music for our bumpers is done by Kevin MacLeod at Incomtech.com. You can find his work, and it's all royalty-free, which means you can use it and give him credit, or buy it and not give him credit. Please remember about the wonderful giveaway that we are having. If you would like your chance at a free mount, we're giving away the Iron Skyreacer. Again, if you already have it, just tell us and we can, obviously grab something else. But the promotion is for an Iron Skyreacer. You can find that at Rafflecopter. Links are in the show notes, as well as everywhere that I post this. I will give you a link everywhere that you can possibly find, to make this as easy for you to access as possible, so that it's easy for everyone in order to get their entries in. And remember that there are some entries that you can do each day, including email us as one of the entry options. The only thing you need to do is just click that entry option and then put your email in there so that I can verify that you did send me an email. Questions, feedback, anything. We just love getting emails from people. If you would like to contact me, my Twitter is at SchwanMichael, which is SchWahn Michael. Evan, how about you?
You can hit me up on Twitter at EDCWow. I actually got a Twitter selfie camera in a Garrison box. Wasn't jumping for joy at the beginning of the show to mention that, because it doesn't really work for Tauren at all.
Does it not?
No, not really. I take up 95% of the screen because I guess the size of my head versus the length of my arm doesn't really lend itself towards a good selfie. So I'll probably still be flipping the camera and then using the old Alt-Z trick and the old print screen trick to post my capering about.
Sad day. I'm sorry.
It's alright. It's okay. I think I'll probably get over it. I just need a good night's rest.
And what about you, Floyd? Where can people get a hold of you at?
The best place right now is simply to email the Castbar if you want to talk to me. You can also find me on Twitter at Phalanx, F-A-L-A-N-G-X. Look forward to a little stupid Twitter name in the near future.
Okay, everybody. Thank you for being here. Guys, take it easy. Enjoy. Let's get out of here. And I'm because I can't, I'm playing this one again.
Oh no.
Aid me! Something you doing? Grant me your strength. No time for play. Me busy. Leave me alone. Animality. Me not that kind of orc. Sweet. Yeah. Ha!